I'm author Sarah A. Chrisman.
I'm Gabriel Chrisman.
And today we're going to talk to you about our recent visit to the Hungarian National Library when we were on vacation. Now this is the third in a series of little videos we've done about our vacations. So if you haven't seen the first two, feel free to go back and catch up. And there will be more coming. But the Hungarian National Library is
in Budapest.
Is very impressive.
Yes.
Now, we were in Budapest because my pen pal lives there, and she'd invited us to visit her because we had told her we were going to the Rose Festival in Bulgaria.
And she was nice enough to set up sort of a tour and behind-the-scenes visit to the library for us.
Yeah, which was possible because Gabriel is a university librarian.
And they needed lots of proof of this, of course, in order to set up this tour.
He had to bring his credentials and everything with him, so...
The libraries in Europe are a little more formal.
A little more formal, but you can't deny it was beautiful.
No, it was utterly beautiful. Pretty amazing.
Yeah. Now, the Hungarian National Library was originally a palace that was built for a member of their parliament.
And it was sort of their in-town palace.
Yeah, it was his in-town palace, and he was related to the Austro-Hungarian monarchy. But his money came from agriculture, and the money that built this particular palace, yes, one of his palaces.
Right, one of several, yes.
Came from agriculture.
I thought part of it came from mining.
No, the mining comes in because in the 15th century, Austria was one of the wealthiest countries in Europe because of its mining.
Right, but this particular family wasn't involved in it.
This particular family, the money that built this palace, because this palace was a late 19th century palace.
Right.
So by then, it wasn't mining money. By then, it was agriculture money.
Okay, yeah.
And yeah, in the 15th century, Hungary was one of the biggest producers of gold, copper, and what was the other one?
Silver, I thought.
Silver, yeah. And actually, that comes into the library again because when we first went in, we went in through the servants' entrance.
Well, sort of. It was also the one the family would use when they weren't like being fancy or having official guests. It was just the carriage entrance.
It was the less fancy entrance.
Yes.
And there are caryatids that are very different from the typical Greek caryatids, whereas the typical Greek caryatids are the women holding the building up as if it were baskets.
And usually dressed in diaphanous gowns and...
Well, they're in Greek garments. The caryatids in the Hungarian National Library are dwarves, actually, mining dwarves.
Very dramatic.
Very dramatic. Now, our pictures of that room aren't very clear because it was a dark room.
They couldn't make the lights turn on.
Yeah. Well, it fits for mining.
It does.
Actually.
It absolutely made sense.
It fits very well.
They were flanking basically this big fireplace that was under the bottom of the staircase. And this was a grand staircase that at the top side of it was their sort of grand entrance for company. And when they were doing sort of a big event, they would have the front doors wide open and everyone would come in up this massive staircase. And this fireplace was the way to heat it from the underside so that they didn't all freeze if these events were in the winter or the fall.
Right, right. Now the whole building is neo-Baroque. So it's very, very fancy. And different sources list different exact dates for when it was built. The library staffer who guided us through told us that they started building it in 1886 and finished in 1889. Now, depending on which source you look up, some sources will put those dates a few years earlier or a few years later, but it was about then that this building was built.
Right.
And it was renovated 26 years ago, so basically it was renovated in the year 2000. But I did notice, because we've done so much work on our own house, we've become very attuned to renovation projects.
Yes.
And looking closely, as one tends to do when you've done this yourself, I noticed that even though they started the renovation 26 years ago, it's still ongoing. So if you looked close, as someone who has fixed a lot of plaster, more plaster than I care to face ever again,
Right.
I was noticing they still had cracks in the plaster in some places. And I was noticing that certain rooms looked like they
hadn't completed the painting.
They hadn't completed the painting. Now, that's not a criticism, because it's a gorgeous building, and there are plenty of absolutely gorgeous rooms, but it was sort of a comfort to me. As someone who's been spending so much blood, sweat, and tears in trying to renovate our house and never really being satisfied with it, to see that this palace with funding from a major nation at their beck and call, and skilled artisans at their beck and call, which I am not, they still have an ongoing renovation after 26 years. That was comforting to me.
Yes.
That we've actually come as far as we have in our house.
Yes.
So that was actually kind of nice. But back to the library. So it was originally a palace. It first became a library in the 1930s.
And it was really fascinating to me that they decided in the 1930s to keep that neo-Baroque style and to restore parts of it to the sort of palace state. It had not been used as a palace for a while. And that basically they still had access to craftsmen and people who had the skills to be able to really make that happen. Some of the rooms even hadn't been a library, and they converted it to a beautiful, appropriate style library.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that was really amazing to see.
Yeah, so there was one room. My favorite room was one that had this amazing spiral staircase in it. And that was originally the smoking room.
Right.
Now, I had seen pictures of this before we went to visit. That's her cup. Don't chase her off.
Okay.
I had seen pictures of this room before we went that I had looked up. And I was very impressed by it. When we actually went there, it was smaller than I expected it to be. Which makes sense, given that it was a smoking room. That wouldn't be the biggest room in the palace.
It wasn't the ballroom.
It wasn't the ballroom. But still an absolutely gorgeous room. And the ballroom had its own musician's balcony.
Yeah, the musician's gallery up above that we got to go up and visit was really quite astonishing. And
this was part of the behind-the-scenes tour.
Right, and because it's not a publicly accessible area, they haven't had to sort of modernize it for safety or anything. So it was very exposed. There was no railing, there was no anything, and you just had an open area on each side. So over both the ballroom and then one of the sort of parlors, the music could just sort of flow out and down into both rooms.
Yeah.
It was very impressive.
And that was one of the fun little behind-the-scenes special things we got to do because Gabriel's the librarian.
And it also allowed us to see some of those servants' corridors that went through various parts of the palace and were not, obviously up to the level of the palace decoration, but it was really neat to see how they operated everything behind the scenes, including a special spiral staircase for the servants to move between all these floors.
Yeah. And so these rooms now that were originally the smoking room or the ballroom, the dining room we also saw, I'll come back to that in a minute, they're all reading rooms now as part of the library. And another thing that always surprises me in Europe is that for Americans, our sense of scale gets really skewed because in America, the big things we're used to seeing are things like school gymnasiums and football fields. So that's basically our baseline for a sense of scale. And then as a small child, when I would hear fairy tales about the grand ballrooms, in my mind, of course, those were always even huger than a football field. Of course, but they're not.
No, they're rather a lot smaller than that. They're still grand in their own way.
They're very grand.
But they're not up to sort of like the huge modern scale that things tend to be built to in America. Right. But because they're not, the size of a football field, obviously, maybe Russia has some ballrooms that size. I wouldn't be surprised. But they can be very, very ornate and very pretty, which was lovely, absolutely lovely. And coming back to
what was originally the smoking room and the dining room, something that those two rooms had in common that was just gobsmackingly beautiful were the carved woodwork in
and especially
those.
the carved ceilings.
Mm-hmm.
Those were particularly interesting.
We saw a lot of carved ceilings on our vacation in Hungary and the Balkans. It's something special to the region that I wasn't expecting and was very impressed by. They're beautiful. When we went to the dining room of the Hungarian National Library, what had been the dining room, it reminded me, honestly, of some of the carved woodwork that I had seen in Bavaria and the Black Forest region when I went there on a school field trip in high school.
Well, it was in keeping with the sort of dwarf caryatids and a lot of the Germanic features of this particular palace.
Well, I think that part of the world, whether, southern Germany at its northern end and then down into Hungary and Bulgaria, there's a lot of fine woodwork that is part of their culture. And that's something that's really fun to see. Now, another room that had been changed from its original purpose was the old stable, which is now a cafe.
Yeah.
So that was pretty fun. We got to sit there, and I had a cup of coffee with my pen pal.
Yeah, and it's really neat because they roofed over what was a courtyard, an open courtyard, where the carriages and the horses would come in. And then the stables were off to one side. You had the servant staircase going up. And now that what was the open stable door basically goes into the cafe.
Right,
and I thought it was a great sort of conversion of that.
Yeah, where the place where the horses used to eat, now the people get to eat.
Right.
And they still had a lot of the old original lamps, except for they had originally been gas lamps, and they got converted to electric just pre-World War I. Now, anyone who's done a renovation, one of the first questions that's going to pop up is, where does all the money for renovating this come from? And I asked them, because that's also an issue with libraries in general, is where does your funding come from?
It is a perpetual issue for just about every library you could name.
Right, and so I asked our guide that, and he said that a lot of their money these days comes from renting out the building for film production, which is a clever way to get money to keep it going.
Yeah, if you have a fancy palace that can be repurposed to be a palace almost anywhere for a movie,
right.
Then you can basically use it as a film set.
Right. We also saw a photo shoot going on there while we were visiting, and I don't know if
some sort of fashion photo shoot.
Yeah, I don't know if she was a model and they were shooting some sort of advertising photo, or if it was just a private photo shoot for some life event or something.
Yeah.
But it was definitely a staged photo shoot that we got to be the little flies on the wall for.
Yeah.
Which is always fun. It's always fun. Now, I could tell that the building had suffered the sort of looteritis that a lot of historic buildings have suffered.
Yeah, especially in Europe. I mean, a lot of those world wars and when the buildings have been taken over for various completely different purposes and stripped and
I mean, in the case of Hungary, you have various armies going through. Then you have the Soviets squatting there, and yeah, there's a lot of people who took away trophies, shall we say?
Yes.
Which is very unfortunate because for me, one of the things that's most fun about visiting house museums as opposed to palaces is that in house museums a lot of the time you get to see the everyday objects that people would have used, and
in palaces they're all gone.
In palaces they tend to have been carted off by whoever won the last conflict.
Yeah, the one exceptions are some of these massive chandeliers that people couldn't carry.
yeah, it's kind of hard to carry those.
It is.
It's kind of hard to carry those. But in any case, I did think it was an absolutely gorgeous building, and I wish more libraries could be like that.
Yeah. It was interesting also, there was sort of a back end to this building that was essentially a modern building that was kind of connected onto it with a very modern library sort of right there. And so you moved directly from palace spaces into very modern library spaces.
And honestly, I thought the modern library spaces had a greater density of books than the
Yes.
palace spaces.
Significantly. And part of that is they did actually double the number of floors by building a floor halfway up the original rooms so that they could basically, have a lot more space for people to walk around and not have as high ceilings.
Now, I'm sure part of why there are a greater density of books in the more modern rooms is to make it easier when they rent out the building for film crews, so they don't have to move as many of the books. But I did think it was kind of a shame, because I think the books deserve to be in the fanciest places, the fanciest settings.
Of course.
I mean, their more archival quality books were in the really fancy rooms.
The ones that they wanted to show off.
Yeah, the ones they wanted to show off.
Yeah.
But I think the books deserve to be in the best rooms. That's just me.
Yes.
I did, as a proud Iowan, I did find myself comparing and contrasting this fantastic library in Budapest with Iowa's crown jewel, which is the law library in our state capital.
And which is similar in some ways, because you have spiral staircases, you have, whole walls of books.
Right. And whereas the Hungarian National Library was originally a palace for a relative of the Austro-Hungarian monarchy, the Iowa State Capitol is a palace of the people. And so our law library is the democratic library.
Despite that, there are elements of it that were actually fancier than the palace.
Right.
Partly that's because it's never been looted.
Right, it's never been looted, and we can be proud of that.
And it has always been what it is now. It was built and then simply maintained.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's different than something that's been repurposed a few times over the course of its life. But anyway, it was interesting to see that. And again, yes, you see pictures and you hear it's a palace, and you have this image in your head. And certainly it was beautiful.
Yeah, it was
But
gorgeous.
it wasn't as large as I expected.
Well, I think it's just the fairy tale effect that when we hear about palaces, they always seem larger than life in our imagination. Now, compared to other palaces, this was not a small one.
No.
It was not. So
Especially for being one that was built in an urban setting.
Right, so don't get that impression.
Right.
It's just that the mind tends to build everything larger than life. And this was, actually built by people.
Right. Yes. Yes.
Which is something to remember when you're looking at real historic buildings and real historic artifacts and anything genuine, that it was made by people to people scale.
Right.
So, but what was your favorite room in this glorious palace of a library?
Probably the reading room that was the smoking room, with the spiral staircases, the darker sort of decoration.
I loved the ceiling in there too.
Yeah, to me, that was what was most amazing about that was that most of the details in that room were actually added in the 1930s, that they weren't original to the room. And I had a hard time sort of squaring that up in my head, because the decor and everything was beautifully 1890s looking. And so it's just really neat. They found craftsmen who could still actually duplicate that style in the 1930s.
Well, they were still around.
Exactly, yeah.
They were still around.
They were, and that's a great resource to have.
Yeah, that was my favorite room too.
Yeah.
I thought it was beautiful.
Yeah, I mean, the close contender for second place would be the dining room, what had been the dining room, with all the Germanic wood carving.
Right, and it was bigger than the smoking room.
It was, yeah.
And it was like being it was about like being inside a jeweler's quality carved chest, basically.
Yeah.
And that was very special about it.
Yeah.
Both gorgeous rooms. They were all gorgeous. Even the stable.
Yes, even the stable was very well done.
Even the stable that's now a cafe. I liked them all.
It had a really nicely done sort of vaulted ceiling.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the dining room, the interesting thing to me, when I saw the pictures before I'd gone there, I thought that the room with the spiral staircase, I assumed the room with the spiral staircase would be bigger than the dining room, but it's the other way around.
Right. Yeah.
And I guess that's part of why that one struck me as a small room, which again makes sense for the smoking room. But I guess something in my mind just associated spiral staircase with huge space. And the dining room, which does not have any built-in elements like the spiral staircase or the balcony, it doesn't get as photographed, and so it seemed like it would be smaller, when in reality it was one of the biggest rooms.
Yeah.
So it's funny how your sense of scale changes when you actually see something in person, and that's part of the advantage of travel.
Yes.
So I'm really glad we got to see it all. And I wish more libraries could be like that, don't you?
I do. And it was crowded, that's the other thing.
Yeah.
It's wonderful. Almost
Yeah.
every seat was occupied. People were reading, people were sitting there and working on assignments, obviously, for college and high school and everything else. It was very impressive to see how busy it was.
Yeah, I loved seeing what a beautiful space it was, but even more, I loved seeing how used it was. That there were people actually using this. I mean, so many libraries in America these days are just empty. There's a few homeless people in there sleeping, and that's oftentimes it. But this was
It's
actually...
especially hard to get school-age kids in libraries.
Yeah.
And here we saw lots of them.
Yeah, this was packed. It was absolutely packed with readers, which I love to see. And that's the biggest takeaway is more people should be reading. I wish America had more beautiful spaces for people to do it in.
Yes.
But I think part of that is that we need to demand them.
Yes.
Yes.
We need more beautiful libraries.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
And I hope you're remembering to tell your friends about my books, by the way. And we hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please give it a nice thumbs up. And happy reading!